So let's get started. My name's Andrea Dodo Balu. I'm the co-chair of the Perth Local Organising Committee. So I'm here in Perth, located on Whadjuk Noongar land. And it's a cold morning here, so just beginning our day. I'd like to introduce Kristen Maisano from St. Catherine University, and that is in the US or Canada, sorry?
It is in the US.
All right, in the US. Which part of the US is it in?
So it's right in the middle. It's Midwest.
Okay, fantastic. And Kristen's paper is called Anxiety Levels in College Students, the Impact of Evidence-Based Remedies, which I think is a very, very important topic, not only for students, but for all of us. So over to you, Kristen. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be here. And I would like to encourage participation in the chat. I'd like this to be more of a conversation, more of a exploring ideas and sharing experiences than me talking at you for 20 minutes. So if you can find the chat, feel free to ask questions, give examples, anything like that is totally encouraged. So let's get started today. Like Andrea said, my name is Kristen Maisano. I am an associate professor at St. Catherine University in the campus is in St. Paul, Minnesota, but I'm coming to you today from the East Coast. I live right outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia. So, anxiety, right? Let's talk about it. I don't think we talk about it enough. So, a survey was done in the United States for graduate students. About 8,000 graduate students enrolled in a bunch of different institutions were surveyed about their health. And questions were asked about anxiety. And students responded, 56% of students responded that they experienced anxiety within the last 12 months. 18% said that it negatively impacted their academic performance, and 4% said it delayed graduation. For those who teach in the graduate level, do these numbers sound correct for your setting? Do you think about half of your students are experiencing anxiety? Would you say about 20% it impacts their academic performance? So this really did reflect what I'm seeing in the occupational therapy graduate programs that I work in. Yes, Martha, thank you. So Martha mentioned that she feels like it's higher. And Martha, could you elaborate on that? Do you feel like it's because of COVID times, or do you feel like it was increasing before we started locking down?
I can only speak for my campus, but I think that it's, at least on my campus, there were rising tension sets, anxiety before COVID. I think COVID was like the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. It was kind of that thing that really pushed everybody over the edge. Too much change, too fast, too many pivots.
Too much uncertainty.
Too much uncertainty. I heard another mental health professional call it the disaster cascade, which is a term I've been fond of using. Of like, yes, like if we are stuck in a disaster cascade, that's exactly what it feels like. And I think our students feel that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but we only have a certain number of cognitive calories to use throughout the day, right? And if our students are battling anxiety and trying to turn down that noise, how much can they really have left to digest the academic information that we're asking them to digest? And Lizzie, you probably see that as far as academic skills support in the center. So let's go to the next slide. This slide, we're looking at undergraduate. So about 30,000 undergraduate students were surveyed. About half said they experienced anxiety in the last 12 months. About a quarter, so a little bit more, said that anxiety negatively impacted their academic performance, and about 3% said it delayed their graduation. So anxiety is on the rise. Like Martha said, she's seeing it more. Lizzie sees it in the academic skills center. Andrea, thank you for sharing. So at an undergraduate level, she saw a steep increase in behavioral health issues. So that's what the data says too. So comparing that data from 2009 to 2019, there was about a 20% increase over those 10 years in anxiety. So that's pretty significant. Our students are experiencing anxiety at rates that we haven't seen before. So why? Why is it happening? If you had to hypothesize why students are experiencing anxiety at a higher rate, what would you guess? Yeah, Chloe, I feel that sometimes, as far as like, you're not sure who isn't anxious. Absolutely. Social media, yeah, those pressures, those external pressures. Yes, Martha, like you mentioned, the disaster cascade. Yeah, and we're more aware of what anxiety is, right? And we're maybe a little bit better at labeling anxiety or other emotions that we're feeling. So what does the research say about this? So research says that there's basically like 3 reasons why this is happening: academic stress, financial stressors, and then this one I really didn't expect to be on this slide: lack of quality sleep. When you look at this slide, what do you think's missing? What would you have said? Oh, I think the researchers probably would say time management might be an issue causing anxiety. What surprises you? What do you think when you see this slide? I was really surprised by the lack of quality sleep, which I shouldn't be from an occupational therapy perspective. I'm an occupational therapist by background. We address rest and sleep all the time. So I was surprised by this, but what some of the research says is that what students are doing to decrease their anxiety is impacting their quality of sleep, which is making them not rested, not feeling great, and then they repeat that cycle, almost like a recycling symbol. And then that decreases their cognitive performance. So absolutely, social media and tech, thank you for mentioning that, Andrea, that absolutely impact sleep, even from the device perspective, not even from the content. When we have those blue lights and all that stuff's going into our eyes and our brain, and our sleep-wake cycles are just thrown out of whack. So basically what this research was saying was mirroring what I was seeing at St. Catherine University. So it would be in informal conversations that I was having with students or during advising sessions that words like stress and anxiety and other feelings were coming up. What do you think when you're advising students or when you're having informal conversations with students, how do they say anxiety? How do they say stressed? What does it look like? What does it feel like? So how it was coming across in my classroom was a couple weeks before classes start. I typically send an email out and I say, just trying to get to know you a little bit so that we can have more meaningful connections when we get in the classroom. And my questions kind of base around like, what's the best way to communicate with you? What do you hope to learn? What can I do to help you be successful? And my last question usually is, if you had a warning label, what would it be and why? And in that warning label, I see a ton of stressed out, don't talk to when stressed, high worry, that kind of thing. And then sometimes I get really good ones like stops to pet dogs or something fun. And I get to use that information when I give them feedback and incorporate kind of that personal touch. But Izzy, I agree with you. It's those like easily overwhelmed or feeling sick, right? That physical manifestation of anxiety. Absolutely. So I'm working on another master's degree in education. So I thought, this is my project, right? This is what I'm going to try to figure out. So I understand now why it's happening, right? That academic stress, financial stressors, lack of quality sleep. So what do we do about it? What have you done in the past that's worked for you when you're mentoring students, when you're advising students who are on that higher level of anxiety? Do you have any strategies that you feel like were pretty effective? I think everybody on this screen probably knows that like the worst thing you can say is, oh, just calm down, because in the history of forever, that's never worked, right? It's never worked to just say, yeah, just relax, just calm down. Yeah, validating and normalizing, absolutely. And connections between students, lots of communication, absolutely. Martha, can you share more about that? Are you thinking cutting anything extra as far as extra work or extra like curricular activities? What do you think in there?
Like so as a faculty developer, this is one of the conversations I have a lot. Do you want to grade that? If you don't want to grade that, do your students want to write that, perform that, produce that?
Yeah.
And how essential is this activity or assignment or anything out of class to your students' ability to reach their outcomes for this class? So it really is that question of what is absolutely essential, because if it's absolutely essential, then it's easy to say, look, you have to do this. We have to do this together. But that opens up space then to do those essential things in the classroom and put less on the students when they're not in a supportive environment. Because I can't control what happens outside the classroom. I can make my classroom supportive. Absolutely.
So and Martha, correct me if I'm not summarizing correctly, but looking at our student learning objectives, our course level objectives, and saying, is this what the students need to know, or is this good to know information? And am I assessing it in a way that's meaningful and purposeful? And am I explaining the why behind what I'm doing?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I really appreciate your input, Martha. Thank you so much. So, like I said, I'm working on another master's degree, so I did a literature review. I found about 21 articles that dealt with anxiety in higher education students, and I purposely removed ones that were subject specific, like math anxiety or communication anxiety, because I wanted to deal more with the overarching anxiety, not just, not that I'm saying just like it's less than, but I didn't want to focus on maybe fear of public speaking or something like that. I wanted a more overarching, we're anxious here, and what can I do about it as a classroom instructor? And how do I model those behaviors for my students? So what does the literature say? The literature says that biofeedback, mindfulness, meditation, and sleep education work to decrease anxiety in college students. So biofeedback, when we think about it, we might think devices and monitoring heart rate and learning to monitor and adjust your physiological responses to situations. So it's been shown to decrease anxiety when it's combined with counseling compared to counseling alone. So it's helpful if students have devices to encourage them to use them. There are some that you can do with smartwatches and things like that. But but this is one of our 4 strategies that we can recommend. Meditation. When I say meditation, what's the first word that comes to your mind? What's like your first automatic thought when I say meditation? Yes. Mindfulness. Yeah. So when we're thinking meditation, we're thinking about that quieting of the mind, right? And it can look different for different people. The physiologic benefits of meditation are proven effective, and it's effective in this population, the higher education student as well. So about this study in particular, students that met, Andrea, I have to agree with you. Andrea said she feels like students may be turned off by the word meditation. I have to agree with you, and I'm not sure what a better word for it is. I've had students more open to using apps and programming like that, like the Calm app or Headspace, instead of saying, here's my recording of a guided meditation that I can do for you. Yes, breathing, deep breathing, being present, absolutely. So another study looked at meditation as well. So a 15-week meditation course, and students had a decrease in anxiety and stress levels, and more of a peaceful, calm feeling after taking that course. So mindfulness. What's the difference between meditation and mindfulness then? So the literature kind of says that mindfulness is that being present, that being aware of your current situation and not living 10 steps ahead. And mindfulness can be practiced in everyday situations. We can be mindful when we're washing dishes or packing up our book bag or whatever it is. Yes, it can be in your everyday activities. It can be done more often. It doesn't require that sitting down and trying to clear your mind that meditation does. But another effective strategy for us to encourage students to participate in. And here's another study as well. Tubbs and team found that the relationship between trauma, mindfulness, depression, and anxiety symptoms showed a robust negative relationship between mindfulness and anxiety symptoms. So if we can have our students be more present in their everyday and feeling what they're feeling in their environment, smelling what they're smelling, tasting what they're tasting, instead of trying to be 3 steps ahead or 6 steps ahead. Sleep education. And this is probably my favorite. I'm going to share some resources with you about it. So students who enrolled in a sleep education program, they completed sleep logs, which I'm going to give you a link to, a sample that I use most often. They received education on sleep, which I have a sleep hygiene handout that you can have. They had fewer symptoms of depression and anxiety than they did prior to the sleep education course. So I took this information and I developed modules for my neuroscience occupational therapy class. And we did a pre-survey to kind of figure out what our current levels of anxiety were. And we built a what we call a subjective units of distress. So when are you the least anxious? And that's a 0. And when are you the most anxious? That's a 10. And we fill in the numbers in between so that we have a common language of, how stressed are you? And increasing the student's ability to be self-aware of what's going on when I'm this anxious, or what's going on when I'm this calm, so that they can identify the feelings in their body. And then I did education sessions on mindfulness, meditation, and sleep hygiene. I did not do biofeedback because I didn't have access to equipment. And then they implemented the strategies. And then there was a post survey. So I'm in the process now of collecting that data and doing the statistics related to it. So stay tuned and we'll know if those modules worked. So in conclusion, our students are absolutely experiencing anxiety at a higher rate than we've seen before, but we have strategies that we can use. So biofeedback, mindfulness, meditation, and sleep hygiene. So I'd like to share some resources with you now. I'm going to put some things in the chat. So I put together a website about decreasing anxiety. So it has some information that your students can use, you can use, and it has the background that we talked about today, but it goes through some resources related to each of the topics. Another resource that I wanted to share with you is Greater Good in Action. And this is an awesome website that has a bunch of different options for mindfulness, meditation. So if I try to tell students that, like, if the first thing you try doesn't work, we have a whole alphabet of other things to try before we kind of like throw our hands up and say it didn't work. So they have really good instructions, they have really good activities, but what I like the most, especially if we have those analytical thinkers, they have a section here that's called Why to Try It, and it shows the evidence behind what we're asking them to do, which I think is really cool. As far as sleep hygiene, there is a website that I recommend from the Center for Deployment Psychology, and the sleep log is here. You can download it for free. Encourage students to fill it out. You can fill it out, whatever works for you. Caffeine content is really important. So if your students are drinking a ton of coffee, energy drinks, goodness only knows what's in those, and it's just interesting to see. And then the other thing that I use most often is the sleep hygiene. Yes, absolutely. I can put this in the chat. Thank you, Andrea. So the sleep hygiene presentation handout is really good. So it talks about setting up your sleep environment, not drinking caffeine after 2, not exercising right before bed, that kind of stuff. Are there any questions? Anything you want to add? Anything you want to chat about? Did that last link go in? And then I'm going to put my email address over here as you guys are typing in questions. So if you have any questions, if you'd like the PowerPoint slides, if you have questions about something, if you'd like to collaborate on something, I'm very open to questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. But we have time. We have about 5 minutes for some questions. You know what, Martha, I'm really interested to learn more about that. So especially from, can these same techniques that work for our students decrease burnout in faculty or decrease anxiety in faculty? And I don't know if it's because I have so many friends in like elementary and middle education, but I feel like teachers are especially burned out at those levels, and it would be interesting to see that. So if anybody wants to collaborate on the faculty piece, I'm very open to it.
Thanks, Kristen. I just jumped on the video here. That was a really, really interesting talk, and thank you for the practical resources that you shared as well. I think that's really good. I don't know what the situation is in other countries, but here in Australia we have what we call access plans. So a lot of students with physical health issues and mental health issues, they apply for an access plan. It gives them usually an automatic 7-day extension on assignments and that type of thing. So it makes it less burdensome for them if they need extra time to get that, and supposedly that can help reduce their anxiety around that aspect of their studies. Do you have anything like that in your universities?
We do. In the US, we have what we call reasonable accommodations. So a student, they need to have a documented diagnosis, and then based on that diagnosis and based on the student's needs, there can be reasonable accommodations. So extensions as needed, or quiet spaces for testing, the like alternate communication strategies as far as the documents for class, or the class materials in alternate fashions, or alternate formats, I guess I should say. It's interesting that you said that, Andrea, because one of the things we've been talking about as a university about attendance and about due dates. Are they discriminatory? So are we discriminating against some of our students by putting attendance policies in place or putting due dates in place? Are we testing time management more than we're testing like the content? And Martha, if you're still with us, I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. So Chloe, I'm not sure if you can jump on. I saw your chat message, but then I can't see it anymore.
Sometimes they seem to pop up to the top of the chat for some reason.
I noticed that too.
I can see Chloe's really right at the top.
Yeah. So
there you are. Oh, good, Chloe. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to ignore your message. You're curious what the discussion among faculty about student anxiety looks like. And I know Martha mentioned what's going on at her university. And basically, in my department, it looks a lot like, at the end of the day, I want students to be competent and happy occupational therapists. I teach in an occupational therapy program. I want them to get there with minimal anxiety. I don't want their quality of life impacted negatively by what we're doing in the classroom and what we're kind of putting on the students. So a lot of it is, the discussion among faculty in my department at least is, okay, what do we do about this? Right? Like, what can we do? What's in our power? Like Martha talked about before, I can't control the external stuff, right? I can't control if you have to work 40 hours a week and go to school full time. I can't control those type of things, but I can control how I approach you, how I set up the classroom, how I set up, if you kind of have a cohort model where you're taking, all of the students are taking the same classes, which happens in our program, I can talk to other faculty so that we don't have 12-page papers due on the same day, and we're spreading out assignments as we can. It can't always happen that way, especially in like the liberal arts and the general studies courses, because they're in different departments. But I think in my department, at least, it looks like, wow, like students are stressed more than we were when we were in school. And those levels are high. What can I do about it? What can we do about it? How do we best support students to get them to their goal? It's an excellent question, Chloe.
Kristen, it's really interesting that you're having a discussion about attendance requirements and due dates. In Australian universities, attendance requirements don't exist in most courses. They may exist in courses such as occupational therapy and those, some practical labs and things like that may be compulsory. From my point of view, and from a lot of students I've spoken to, including my son, it is not a good idea, because there's a lot of research over also around student connection, a sense of belonging that helps students.
Yes.
If the student starts to feel a little bit, out of place or anxious at the start of a semester and there's no attendance requirements, it's quite detrimental to them, because they'll choose just to stay in their room rather than get up and face going to class, because they don't have to. So I think it's a really important balancing act, because for some students at least, the requirement to attend class will get them out of their house. They will, hopefully make more connections, because they do have to be in class. And from an academics point of view as well, having no attendance requirements increases my anxiety levels, because I don't know who's going to be in the class any given week. So there could be 5 students out of a class of 25 or something that have turned up. So it's actually quite a point that I'm quite sort of passionate about, that I think it is a mistake to just abolish attendance requirements. I don't think it works. And I don't know about your universities as well. We have a lot of online, fully online students. So if they really do have anxiety and they can't come to class, then there's that option. And we do have a lot of students who take that option to be fully online.
Yeah. I think about that a lot. So I teach primarily online in an online program. Students come to campus for labs, but I wonder, it's wonderful to have an online option, and I think that's probably the direction much of education is going to go to, based on just my opinion. But I worry if we're behind a screen, and then especially in a healthcare profession or a public service profession, do students get to a point where they need to be with people and we need to interact on a face-to-face basis? Or is that transition from behind the computer to being with people, how are we preparing students for that, so that it's not oh no, people, right? Nikita, I want to mention your comment. Something to maybe consider in work with students could be the comorbidity of anxiety with other mental health disorders and barriers in mental health care that students may experience. Absolutely. And going back to what Andrea was talking about online options, that's been a barrier for us. For campus-related support has been a barrier for us, because in the United States, licensure happens by state. So if a student is virtually attending a university from a different state, our counselors only have a Minnesota license, so they can't get the support services from campus. So that's really, really difficult. Thank you for bringing that up. I know we're over time, but I just want to make sure that everybody has their questions answered. Everybody has resources, has my contact information. I'd really love to hear from you if you want to continue this conversation, or if you have any ideas, or if you'd like to collaborate in any way. And Andrea, I would just like to thank you for being there with us tonight and helping me get started.
Thank you for a really excellent talk, Kristen, and thanks for everyone who came. I know there's probably another session starting. I haven't got anything scheduled myself. So I've got a bit of a coffee break, I think, before I moderate my next session. It's a really, really important research, I think, Kristen, because I think, all of us here have noticed that students are dealing with this. Yes, it's more recognisable and more spoken about, but I don't think that is the only reason that we're hearing more about it. Yes, and please continue your work. and I'd love to be in contact with you sometime to hear, more insights about this important topic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.